right, so welcome to another episode of Around My House. I alluded to in another video where I fixed a towel bar by using a toggle bolt, that I had a more technical problem, which was I have a toilet paper roll holder, as you can see here, it's just on its last legs, that needs to be re-anchored to the wall. I'm just going to pull it out because it's just going to fall. One of our technical issues is we have a pocket door here. So we cannot use a very deep solution. And in fact, I will show you what happened when I disassembled this from the wall. Let me go ahead and go through the process as if we were just starting. This was attached to the wall with actually two drywall anchors. There's a set screw here that I had to loosen. I'm going to go ahead and loosen that. And that should pull the mounting piece out. So this piece was in here. There's actually two holes for the mounting hardware. And there were actually two plastic anchors holding it in place. Okay, good job. That's great. Except it didn't last. This house was only a couple years old and it didn't last. As soon as I pulled it out, I realized a couple things. The first thing is, let me move this down here so you can see better. The first thing is that, if you can tell, they have cut these anchors short. This is a smaller version of the same anchor. And look how much longer it is. They actually clipped the end off. Why? They didn't want to hit the door. In addition, they also used a different screw. So they used this short screw rather than, this was the screw that came with that smaller anchor. So the reason why they did that is, again, they didn't want anything to hit this door. So the problem is, though, is they didn't engage the anchor. The longer screw is supposed to split this anchor open. In fact, if you look at the instructions for drywall anchor, you can see in the picture what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to split apart, and that finalizes the anchoring process. So it was really not a very thoroughly thought through solution. And it now leaves me with two holes that I have to worry about. Now, if you may remember in one of my other videos, I used a toggle bolt. And we'll look at one of those here. And if you remember, the way this toggle bolt works is we screw on this piece, the wing, if you will. And then we pinch this together. We shove it through the hole. It pops open, and then as we thread this screw, it pulls this wing against the backside of the drywall and gives you a nice solid anchor. And as I said in the previous video, this particular size anchor holds up to 95 pounds. The problem is that we've got kind of a math issue here. I've drawn a diagram to try to explain this. So here's what we've got. This wall right here, this is the pocket door itself. I've measured by sticking a screwdriver in the drywall that I have about 1.5 inches before what I poke through this wall touches the door, the pocket door inside. So the drywall is 1/2 inch. That leaves us about 1 inch of play in here. That's great. This toggle bolt, the wing itself right here, its depth when it's wide open like this, so from bottom to top, just the wing, I've measured that to be about 1/2 inch. Then we've also got a little bit more room. If I get the anchor, the mounting hardware, this mounting hardware has about 1/8 inch lip in it, so I've accounted for that here as well. So we still have a problem though. If we try to use this as a solution, we still have a 2-inch screw. And 2 inches is 2 inches. So if we take that 2 inches and we subtract the 1/8 from this, then we've still got 1 7/8 inches, and our total depth is only 1.5 inches. So how am I going to do this? Obviously this solution didn't work. They cut it short and they didn't get the anchor to do what it was supposed to do. So I came up with an idea, and hopefully it will work for you as well. Hopefully it'll work for me. What I plan to do is I'm going to use this toggle bolt solution. But the difference is I'm going to insert it with just a tiny bit amount of thread showing at the end. And before I do that, I'm going to shear off, I'm going to use a hacksaw and I'm going to cut off the head of this screw. Okay? The reason why I'm doing that is if I put it through this hole and instead of having a screw head, I use a nut, I can tighten that nut with like a socket set or a wrench or a pair of pliers and pull everything nice and snug and get the solution I want. Now the question is how long or how short do I leave this screw? Well, it turns out that how long I leave the screw may not matter because it's going to be hidden inside this cover. Okay? And this cover is hollow and very deep. So it shouldn't matter. I could leave this screw at 2 inches or a little less because I got to cut off that little non-threaded piece there. But I should be able to leave it as long as I want. And then by just simply cranking down on the nut, I'll be able to create the tension, the tightness that I need to hold this hardware bracket to the drywall. So wish me luck. I'm going to show you how to cut a threaded screw like this and how to make it so that it's reusable, the cut end. It's just a little technique that I learned from somebody else, and it's easy to do, but I'll have to take you to my workbench in order to do that. So let's hope this works. My other plan, by the way, is to only use one side of these 2 screws. I don't need 2 toggle bolts to hold this in place, and this thing holds 95 pounds. That way I only have to cut 1 screw. Let's hope it works. So I'll get back to you in the garage. Okay, so welcome back. So we're at my workbench, and what we're going to try to do is we're going to cut this screw. We're going to cut the head off this screw. But we also want this nut to be able to thread on it. So there's a little technique for this. It's nothing unusual, but so we want to cut this head off. I'm going to put it in my vice clamp. One of the problems with this vice clamp, well, it's not a problem with the vice clamp, but most vice clamps, is it's got a very bitey surface, and we don't want to ruin these threads. So I happen to have these soft pieces that are magnetic that fit in between the vise, and that way I'm not going to ruin these threads. Well, hopefully not going to. So I'm going to clamp it in there, get it nice and tight, and take my hacksaw. I'm just going to pick a spot. I don't have this level. I'm going to make this level to the ground because I'm going to try to cut straight down. I'm just going to pick a spot beyond where I still have thread, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut it. It's going to be loud. I'll mute it. So that's going to be hot. You generate a lot of heat by cutting that. So we're going to let that cool down a little bit. No matter how careful you cut with a hacksaw, you're going to leave burrs. You won't be able to see it here, but there's actually a burr on the end of this. This is going to make it really hard for our nut to screw onto it. All right. So there's a couple of options. We could thread this nut from the back side of the nut up to where we need it and then put it in its place. That's certainly an option, but it's very easy to fix these burrs. And the way you do that is you can either use a file, or if you have a grinding wheel, you can use a grinding wheel. And all I'm going to do is take a file, and kind of like you're sharpening a pencil, you just want to cut it at, grind it at an angle. It might be better if I do it this way. We're just going to, like you're sharpening a pencil, you're just going to use the file, and it's just at a slight angle, maybe 45-degree angle, and you're getting the burrs off is what you're doing, and you're also making it so that it's receptive to the nut that we want to put on there. I'm really not taking a lot off. And there's still some pointiness there, but that's in the middle. So let's see if our nut will thread on this. Yeah, it's giving me a little resistance. There we go. This came right on. So that's how you cut a screw and make it so that it will receive a nut on the other end. All right, so there's a little pro tip there. Now we're going to go back to the bathroom and see if my crazy idea is going to work. All right, so before we install this, let's just recap what we're trying to do. We're taking a regular toggle bolt solution and we're kind of inverting it. I've cut the head off of the original toggle bolt screw, and I found a nut in my drawer full of spare nuts, but you can certainly find the right nut for this. I believe this is a 3/16 inch nut that works on this threaded screw or bolt. And so instead of ending up with all this extra bolt coming out at the back of the wing of the toggle bolt, we're going to move it so that all the extra screw ends up on the inside of the house instead of the inside of the wall. And we're going to use this nut to create the tension that we need to hold everything in place. So that's the idea. Now we're going to give it a try. All right, so a couple of things to note. I've left the original screw before cutting the head off as long as I could allow it, pretty much. So this 2-inch screw is probably about 1 7/8 right now. And we need the screw length so that we can push the anchor, this wing, through the drywall and allow it to expand. So that's why we need the length of the screw. Let me get this nut back on. I don't want to lose my anchor somewhere. So now what we want to do is once we've gone through the hardware, now don't forget, in my previous video, this particular hardware, there's a notch cut in the bottom and there's flat on the top. The set screw needs to go into that notch. I'm also using the left hole instead of both holes. Before they use both holes, I don't need both holes. I don't need 180 pounds of strength in my toggle bolt. And then what I want to do is I'm going to insert the wing into the wall. But before I do that, I'm going to close this door so I don't hit the door when I push through. So I'm going to push it through, and as I feared, it hasn't popped. There, it popped. Actually, it didn't pop. All right, so we're going to try again. So I'm going to loosen this a little bit so that we get the maximum length of the screw. I've got this nut pretty close to the edge. Let's try again. There it goes. Did you hear that click? So only one of them clicked, so I'm going to play with it. There we go. They're both clicked. Now, we want to tighten this nut. No big deal. But what we want to be careful of is we don't want to turn the screw. If we turn the screw, it's going to start protruding through the other side. Before I go any further, I want to make sure we've got clearance from the door. So I'm pulling as if I had tightened this nut. I'm pulling on it. I'm going to slowly open my door and make sure it doesn't hit anything. No, it's not hitting anything. We are good. We are good. So the solution should work. So the other thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to tighten this nut as best I can without turning the screw. We do not want to turn the screw itself because we don't want it to thread any further in. So I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to do that. All right, it's almost finger tight. Now I'm going to use a socket that I have to do the final tightening. This, the location of this is very important. this final piece needs to sit on here just right so that this falls into that hole. So when I examined it before taking it off and after playing with it, I can see that this location right here is a good location. There we go. Hold the screw with the pliers, pull on the screw, and then use my finger to tighten the nut as much as I can. I've got some smaller needle nose. Wait, let me get a bit of grip. Oh yeah, oh much better. The smaller needle nose allows me to get the tip of the needle nose between the nut and this piece right here. There, that is freaking tight. So good. I hope this works. So before I go any further, let's make sure our door is not in the way. Nice and gentle. Don't want to scratch the door. Okay, great. All right, I need my Allen key for the set screw. Set screw goes down. This can go up for now. Go ahead and get this started. Get this mounted where it needs to be. There we go. I'm going to wiggle this housing just a little bit. Make sure it falls into, yeah, there it goes. There we go. So now we've got, we're good. Now it looks like this one is loose too. I'm probably gonna have to mess with that. It may be the same solution, but I'm not gonna drag you through that. So I believe we've solved the problem with trying to do an anchor in a shallow space. There may be other solutions. I could not find any. I hope that helps you. And thank you again for watching around my house. And I'm going to go ahead and fix this one without you on board. Thanks.